What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost podcast. Episode 17, we're doing serial killer movies, specifically me and Leo's favorite ones. And the popularity of serial killer stories, movies, documentaries, books are evident in pop culture. CSI took over TV. People are obsessed with this topic. People are obsessed with like the evil nature to humanity. So it's dark side. It's very popular. It's fun to talk about. And there's a lot of really, really good movies on this subject. We picked our 4 favorites to go over in this episode. So these are just our favorite serial killer movies. There's obviously so many great ones, but we enjoy watching these ones the most. Before we get into it, if you like our podcast and our content and you want to help support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, share it with people, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. Leaving a 5-star review helps so much for us to get seen by other people, specifically those written reviews. Write a couple sentences, whatever you want. We don't care. Just leave a 5-star review. We would love it. Thank you. Love you. Thank you so much. We don't have a marketing team. Again, it's just me. Leo does all the editing. I do everything else. Hit the notification bell for new episodes that come out. Hit that bell, guys. And also, before we start, we have a friend, another guest spot from our buddy Liam Pringle. He's a TikToker who has like a bunch of great movie content at Liam Pringle1 on TikTok. So Liam's going to give us his top favorite serial killer films starting now. Go.
Thanks, guys. Here are my 5 favorite serial killer movies. Number 5, Monster. Eileen Wuornos had an absolutely fascinating story, and this one presented how cold the world can be. Number 4, Natural Born Killers. This presented serial killers in a psychedelic and trippy manner that made for a fresh and captivating film overall. Number 3, Cure. This is a beautifully filmed Japanese serial killer movie that I couldn't help but throw into the list. Go into this one completely blind and let it work its psychological magic. Number 2, Zodiac. This is a literally puzzling mystery thriller that really took a lot of twists and turns while still being genuine and authentic. Made for a great serial killer movie. Number 1, it's got to be American Psycho. Christian Bale was perfect for the role, and the blend of narcissism, classism, comedy, and murder made for an incredible movie.
All right, we love the list, Liam. Good job. We got a couple of the same ones. But everyone go check out Liam at Liam Pringle1 for more great film content. Let's get into this. Let's dive in, man. First movie we're going to go over, probably, I think, both of our favorite serial killer movie. It's great. Seven, which came out in 1995, directed by the great David Fincher. He made this after Alien 3. Yeah, so he made Alien 3 in 1993, and then he made this, or 1992. The movie is about 2 homicide detectives, a rookie and a veteran, both on the hunt for a serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins as his motive. This is an extremely dark, disturbing film that I think is one of the first films to show such graphic sides of human nature, and especially to show the gruesome killings of serial killers in such detail and authenticity with graphic imagery and content. Yeah, and I mean, David Fincher is one of my personal favorite directors. I think the guy's a living legend. He has a very distinct style. He's a perfectionist. He has unique editing philosophies, and he's also a master of hidden special effects in plain sight. And to begin the movie, Fincher is known for his opening titles. He doesn't do it in every movie, but in a lot of his movies, he has very unique opening titles. And the movie 7 has very disturbing opening titles. Yeah, he sets the tone immediately for the movie. This movie's not only going to scare the hell out of you, but it's also going to challenge you mentally, emotionally. You know, it has that 9 Inch Nails song, and he works with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross all the time now. Yeah. He wanted the credits to look like a serial killer wrote them, so it has that scratchy handwriting. And at times, like the film, it's hard to watch and it's ugly. Yeah, it's disturbing, the imagery they have in that. I think it's just 3.5 minutes, but also it sets you up to see what this film is. It's a precursor to what the tone of the movie is. Yeah. And this movie, it is a procedural police drama, but it really isn't. This movie's more of an investigation of humanity and the darkest depths of mankind. And it's like it's a meditation on evil and inhumanity. And the ironic thing about it is it's a film about a serial killer and all his slangs. Yeah. You don't see any of the killings. You don't see any violence. The only time you see violence is when Brad Pitt's character at the end, Mills, gets hit by John Doe and breaks his arm, which we'll talk about later on. But I mean, it's not physically violent. It's psychologically violent. It's psychologically violent. Yeah. And it implies a lot without showing what happens. It shows the aftermath of the violence. Yeah. Probably the film's greatest strength is the dynamic between Morgan Freeman's character Somerset and Brad Pitt's character Mills, because they are such. What makes the movie so compelling is the characters in it, and these two are really drawn out, well performed characters, and they're opposite sides of the same coin. They clash at times. Their perspectives on the world are completely different. The way they handle their police work is completely different. The way they approach it, and their philosophies and ideologies are completely different. So they clash all the time.
Yeah, their relationship is very entertaining. You can't help relate with both of them. You know, Mills, Brad Pitt's character, is this energetic, youthful, arrogant guy, and then Freeman's character Somerset is wise and has a mature nature, and you relate to both of those figures at the same time. In the film, it shows the price that good men have to pay to stop evil. And it's such a dark movie, like you've pointed out, that their characters, and the movie's filled with so many good characters that their goodness counter the evil acts and the darkness of the film.
Yeah. Well, I think the brilliance to Somerset, Morgan Freeman's character, is they hint at it, and you can kind of tell that when he was young, he was probably idealistic, just like Brad Pitt is currently.
Probably just like Mills.
But then the world changed him, and it turned him cynical, and he began to hate the world. And now he's reached this point in his career where he thinks the world is beyond saving, and that's why he wants to retire, because he feels like the world's so messed up. There's nothing more I can do, and I'm destroying my life, I'm like sacrificing my life for a futile effort because the world it's gone.
Yeah, and like you said, they're both on opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Somerset, he put in his retirement. It's his last week on the force, and he gets hit with this case. And Brad Pitt's character, he's a rookie on the homicide detective unit, so they get put together, again, opposite situations. Brad Pitt's ready to work. He wants to fight. He wants to solve murders. He wants to solve this murder.
He thinks he can make a difference, and he thinks the world can still be saved.
And Somerset has already given up on the world.
Yeah.
And it's not that he doesn't believe in humanity, but again, the world is so ugly, and what he's seen in this city for so long has disturbed him to want to leave the force.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting about this movie is we don't even know what city it is. It's an unnamed city. It seems like it looks like East Coast. And what's really fun is the filmmakers purposely made it rain in every single exterior shot. It's always raining there. They did that for two reasons: to create this like never-ending feeling of dread. And then also they felt it was easier to make it raining in every scene because they wouldn't have to worry about bad weather if it's bad weather in every shot.
Yeah, so it's a really good emotional and cinematic effect. Also, practically, it's convenient. So yeah, that also adds to the film's darkness in the brooding dark look. Was also achieved through a chemical process called bleach bypass, where the silver in the film stock was not removed, which deepened the dark, shadowy images of the film. That's why this film has like this unique look compared to a lot of other movies. Like the blacks are so black and the lights are so light, and it's just
very
ultimate contrast.
Yeah.
And it looks so unique than other films. And just like the screenplay is like kind of a straightforward script. It's a homicide investigation of all these murders, but Fincher takes this script and he turns it into this almost disturbing nightmare experience fairy tale, where like not many filmmakers could have done what he did and turned it into a masterpiece of a horror serial killer film.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of like the pacing, his editing style, the shocking nature of the violence, of the crimes that he shows. Like this film came out in 1995, but still, like this was a risky film for the time.
Yeah,
a lot of studios didn't want to take a shot on this. And especially the ending, which we'll get to in a little bit. Yeah. It's a dark movie. Yeah. It was a dark take in the mid-90s.
It's a difficult movie to watch, and especially if you're not used to these kinds of films, because what it illustrates is all over there's so many people in the world, and most people are good, but there are some few people out there that are just evil. And this movie really delves into what it would be like to interact with someone like that, and what kind of consequences do their actions have on the world. You know what I mean? And we need people like Somerset and Mills to be able to protect society from these kinds of people.
Yeah, and despite the film's content being so dark and evil, Fincher also does a great job creating lightness in the film. You know, out of nowhere, there's these scenes where
Somerset comes over for dinner, and as soon as he opens the door, you hear Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man playing. It's a very light, fun, playful song. It's a very light dinner scene, and amidst all this terror and this dread and all these dark, evil scenes. And then also when Tracy calls Somerset to ask to meet him in person, Somerset's just listening to some old jazzy music. And it's just like change of pace, and kind of as a viewer, it relaxes you a little bit, lets you put your guard down because you've been so tense the whole movie, and every time there's a new murder, you're just more on edge and more on anxiety, and he just loosens it up just to give you more of it in a little bit.
Yeah, and you learn more about the characters in those scenes. Like that dinner scene I love, because after they have dinner, Gwyneth Paltrow goes to bed. Those two, they start going over the case, and then there's this really funny moment because you can see how they're very different. Like Brad Pitt clearly doesn't drink wine, because when he gives Somerset a glass of wine, he pours a tall glass about this high filled with wine, and then Somerset takes the glass and he looks at it and he's like, what? So they're very different people, and you can see the way they carry out how they handle their jobs. Like, for example, when Brad Pitt decides to illegally kick down John Doe's door, Morgan Freeman obviously clashed with him about that, and then opposite side of that, Morgan Freeman illegally obtains the library records from his FBI agent friend, and Mills doesn't like that. So they have conflicting natures with how they approach their lives and their jobs.
And again, so we're talking about a very important movie in the twist genre. So there's gonna be some spoiler alerts. If you guys haven't seen this movie, you might want to fast forward a little bit, but we're gonna talk about some shit about this movie. That's just gonna blow your mind. So spoiler alert, here we go. So Kevin Spacey's role in this film was kept secret for so long. He's uncredited. It's similar to Matt Damon with Interstellar, where you didn't even know he was in the movie, and he wasn't even advertised in the film. And obviously Kevin Spacey plays John Doe, the killer. And what I love about the script and what Fincher did directing is you don't see the killer for halfway through the movie, like an hour and a half in?
More than that.
It's got to be an hour and 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
I should have checked the timestamp, but you don't see his face for so long, but you see his actions and you see what he's done. And you see his hands in the opening credits and stuff like that.
But the thing is, so many movies and shows, as they're showing you the detective storyline, they'll be showing you the killer storyline. And so this is unique in where it keeps that mystery and builds that mystery up until we're just dying to see who this killer is. Who is this person?
Yeah, you don't even get interaction with him until he gets caught by Mills and Somerset, and then the chase ensues. Speaking of the chase, so during the chase scene where Somerset and Mills are chasing down John Doe,
which I think it's one of my favorite foot chases. Like that and Point Break, absolutely fantastic foot chases in film history.
Before they break down the door, in the movie, this is where John Doe injures Mills and breaks his arm. And this wasn't originally in the script. What happened was they were filming this chase scene, and Brad Pitt literally broke his arm by sliding and breaking his arm against a windshield, I think, of a car. And they had to put a cast on him, so they had to alter the script and some dialogue to have Brad Pitt's character Mills were cast throughout the film. And since this was early into production, a lot of scenes he has a broken arm when he's not supposed to have a hurt arm yet, so he has to hide his arm throughout the scenes and stuff like that, like behind his body and stuff. So might be able to catch it.
There are a couple shots where you can see his arm, but he's got the sleeve rolled down, but you can see it's thicker because it's bulky because of the cast underneath it.
It was a very serious injury. It was a laceration that went down to his bone.
Damn.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad. But so he wasn't supposed to have a broken arm throughout the film.
But that chase scene's incredible because it starts out with them at the door, and then John Doe starts firing at them, and then with Howard Shore's music, all the brass and horns going crazy, and then there's that incredible chase through the apartment complex outside, and there's that tracking shot where Brad just jumps across like outside on those like dumpsters and those bins. And then it leads outside into the street, and they're running across the city street. And then it leads to the alleyway where Brad Pitt knows he's there, but we don't know where he is. And there's this dump truck sitting in the alleyway. And this is where John Doe, surprisingly, he physically incapacitates Brad Pitt by hitting him with like a tire iron. And then he holds a gun to his head, and then we think he's going to kill him. And he must want to kill him, but for some reason he decides to spare Mills, and then he runs off.
Yeah, but he's sparing Mills for a reason.
Because as we're understanding, John Doe has an incredibly intricate plan laid out that he has been working on for years, and keeping Brad Pitt alive is part of that plan.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. And some people say this movie is too gory for them and too violent. But again, Fincher doesn't show the kills. He doesn't show any of the violence. Again, the only violence you really see is the very last scene of the movie.
Yeah.
And then when Mills gets hit with the tire iron.
A lot of what you see are just photographs of the killings.
Which Fincher does such a great job making just as disturbing as if you were watching violence on screen.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like, for example, with the prostitute killing, we have the scene in the interrogation room where the other victim, the man, he's just hyperventilating, telling them the story, and we don't know what happened, but we can tell whatever happened has caused this person to have an insane panic attack, and he's shaking, and we want to know what happens, and then at the end of the scene we just get a quick shot, a photograph of the event, and it's so disturbing.
Not even the event.
There's just the item,
the tool that was made for him to wear to penetrate the escort.
Yeah, so we don't even actually see the act, but just from the building up the tension with that guy's story and the way he behaves to that photo of the instrument, that's all we need, and it's probably more horrific just using our imagination. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The investigation's going pretty poorly.
I mean, even though they get access to his apartment, they're not close to finding him.
Yeah, exactly, because we're beginning to understand how brilliant this killer is. And he's so prepared, even for an unexpected surprise like them knocking on his door, that they still aren't even one step closer to catching him. So the entire investigation, they've just been trailing him the entire time with absolutely no clues to who he could be. And then, just out of nowhere, John Doe shows up at the police station and turns himself in. And it's that disturbing image where Kevin Spacey's just covered in blood, and his fingers are bandaged because he sliced off his fingerprints. And he's screaming at the detectives. Detectives! What an amazing moment in the movie. So shocking, too. And then this leads to the climactic ending.
John Doe says that he has more bodies and he wants to take them to him. And there's this actually great scene where they're with their captain, I think it's a captain, and they're discussing whether they should do it or not.
With John Doe's lawyer.
And it's this great setup where, can you explain the filmmaking behind it, where he changes the shots, or Fincher does multiple shots with one take? So he sets it up and it's like a wide shot, then moves to a medium shot, and then comes back and does like a side shot?
The way Fincher uses the camera work in this movie is he based upon the conversations and the power exchanges going on in the conversation. One character will start in power, and then it'll change to another character being in power in the situation. And so he cuts to these different shots that in the camera changes to show on a visual level, and we're subconsciously interpreting how the power dynamic is changing throughout the conversation.
Yeah, and this is super apparent in that dialogue scene between the detectives and their captain to see if they're going to let the detectives take John Doe to find more bodies of victims. And so obviously this is a lie that John Doe has created so that he can fulfill his plan.
Yeah.
So at this point, he's fulfilled 6 of his 7 deadly sins. He still has 1 remaining. The last one left is wrath. John Doe takes the detectives to this middle of the wasteland in the middle of some random state, and there's a van coming down the road, so Somerset has to go and flag down this van to try to stop, see who it is in case it's a surprise attack.
And there's a helicopter surveilling the situation.
So then Brad Pitt's character Mills is left alone with John Doe. And this is where we finally see the fulfillment of John Doe's plan, where his plan all along was to have Mills become his final deadly sin, murder, which is wrath. So instead of him committing wrath himself, he becomes the sacrifice for wrath's deadly sin. And he has already committed the sin of envy by killing Mills' wife.
And he was envious of Brad Pitt's normal life.
So
because he could never have a normal life.
And this is where we get the famous line, "What's in the box?
What's in the box?"
What's in the box?
So what happens is, as Morgan Freeman goes, he stops the truck driver, and we end up seeing it's a delivery man. This guy says he got paid $500 to drop this package off at this exact time at this exact location. So Somerset sets him away, and then he's looking at the box, and after a few minutes of hesitation, he opens it. We don't see what's in the box, but Morgan Freeman's reaction is terrifying. He jumps back in disbelief, and then right away he understands what's happening, and then immediately he tries to stop Mills from doing anything. So he starts running back to Mills and John Doe.
And this is such a powerful scene because this is an amazing performance by Brad Pitt, because Mills is this arrogant guy who, again, wants to catch this guy. He wants to stop him.
Yeah.
And then he has to deal with the struggle.
And also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this entire time, and especially when they're talking in the police cruiser on heading to this location, Mills thinks that John Doe is full of shit and he's just crazy, and he has absolutely no fear that anything could happen.
Yeah, and he basically gets confirmation from Somerset that Gwyneth Paltrow's Tracy's head, is in the box. And so then you're dealt with this. You have to watch Brad Pitt's character Mills deal with this internal struggle of whether or not he's going to kill John Doe. And the problem with killing John Doe is if he kills John Doe, he helps him fulfill his 7 deadly sins.
Yeah.
And what John Doe wants is to be revered and remembered and studied forever.
Yeah.
He says it multiple times, what I've done will be remembered and studied for decades and for years.
Yeah.
And if you don't kill John Doe, he loses because he doesn't get to carry out his 7 deadly sins. He doesn't complete it, and he never gets studied besides being a douchebag serial killer.
Movie of the week.
Yeah, basically. But if he fulfills his 7 deadly sins, then he'll live on forever. And so if Brad Pitt's character Mills kills John Doe, he completes the 7 deadly sins. So that's why Morgan Freeman tells him if you kill him, he wins.
Yeah.
But Brad Pitt's character Mills can't help himself, and there's no way he's not going to kill John Doe for what he did to his wife.
And there's this amazing shot of Brad Pitt just trying. He's weighing the options, and he's trying. He doesn't want to kill him, but he has to. And then David Fincher throws in, because Brad Pitt seems to be like he's gonna stand down, but then Fincher throws in a really quick cut of Gwyneth Paltrow's face. So it's like you can imagine, you see Brad Pitt basically imagining his wife's face, and then once that cut happens, he throws his gun up and just unloads on John Doe.
Yeah, it's a very emotional ending, and it's an insane twist. And the thing about this ending, it wasn't the preferred ending by the studio. So Fincher took this job because he got an accidental alternate ending script which had the head in the box in it. The real ending that the studio wanted to do was it would be a race against time to save Tracy's life.
So dumb.
Which would have been terrible.
Yeah.
And then there's also another version where Somerset kills John Doe instead of Mills, which, yes, it's an honorable ending because that way it saves Mills' life and he still has a life to live. But in this way, it's better because the killer wins, and it's pretty freaking nuts.
It's unbelievable, and the ending is so shocking, and the studio didn't want that ending even with Brad Pitt signed on. And so what happened was Brad Pitt told him he wouldn't be in the movie if they changed the ending.
That's why I love Brad Pitt, man.
He's like, I'll only do this movie if that's the ending in it.
It's great.
Yeah.
And then the final thing we hear on this film, the final line of dialogue is Somerset saying, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part.
Yeah.
It's a very emotional line.
So he's changed his perspective on the world and still thinks that he has work he can do to help improve the society. And then the opposite happened to Brad Pitt, where he was this idealistic, up and coming, like energized youth, like young detective who's going to make a difference. And then the evil of the world just completely destroyed him. So they kind of changed their perspectives on the world. Actually, completely change into the opposite direction for both of them.
Yeah, I love this movie. It's fantastic. If you've never seen it, watch it.
Yeah,
it's probably the best serial killer movie ever made.
It's easily one of my favorite David Fincher movies, and he's made some great movies.
It's up there. And it's one of my favorite Brad Pitt performances. The acting in this movie is phenomenal.
Morgan Freeman's great in it too.
Everyone's so good in this movie.
Yeah. Let's move on to American Psycho.
Yes, I love this movie.
So this is one of my favorite dark comedies. I don't know how Mary Herron, the director, people are surprised that a woman actually directed this film, but she was able to balance humor and graphic violence and in such a profound way where she made the heinous acts of a serial killer hysterical.
Yeah, and she really captured the tone of the book too.
Yeah.
The book is insane, and the movie is a really great reflection of it. And so this was made in 2000, directed, as you said, by Mary Herron. Stars Christian Bale as a wealthy New York City investment banker and serial killer. And this is a cult classic film. We've seen it a couple dozen times each, and it's the thing with this movie is, like you said, it's a dark comedy. The more and more times I see it, the more I realize how funny it is, and I laugh harder every time.
It almost gets to the point where sometimes I'm watching this movie, and even when I read the book, because when I read the book, I was laughing out loud, and every time I watch this movie, I just crack up even more every time I watch it. But it also, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, is it wrong to be laughing so hard at these moments?
Am I a psychopath? There are so many good lines in this movie, in the book too. And the film and story is basically a satirical social commentary on the shallowness of the wealthy elite, consumerism, sexual insecurity, and apathy.
Yeah.
In general.
This film was such a critical success, and people revered his performance so much it led him into this leading man stratosphere and catapulted him into the next phase of his career.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Christian Bale roles of all time.
100%.
And I love the character of Patrick Bateman. He's so fascinating. Like, ironically, like Batman, which Christian Bale plays, Patrick Bateman is also a character with multiple personas. You know, he has like 3 main personas, in my opinion. In public, to his friends and family, he's Patrick Bateman, a wealthy, charming, handsome investment executive banker. In his personal life, in his private thoughts, which you hear throughout narrations, he's an arrogant, narcissistic sociopath. And then there's an inner side to Patrick Bateman where he's a psychotic killer who tries to hold back when he can, but is unleashed when his urges become too great to control. So really, I see 3 different versions of Patrick Bateman in this movie.
That's an interesting way to look at it. And Bale is so good in this because the way he delivers his lines in his American accent, this smug, elitist accent, you can't help but just laugh at everything he says. And even when he's doing the most horrific acts of violence on other people, you still, it's like this weird thing where you're just like kind of rooting for him.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
And you want to see the next kill.
I have to return some videotapes. What's that for? For taping something.
Duct tape. I need it for taping something.
And this movie's like so metaphorical too. And like, we all know that infamous skincare face mask routine.
Yeah, that sequence I think is one of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah, where he's going through all the products and rituals he does every morning, because you're getting not only a real taste of the character of Patrick Bateman and how obsessed with himself he is, but also, to me, the face mask represents the mask that he wears every day as Patrick Bateman, where he spends so much time caring for it, so as no one can see beneath this mask. It's a perfect mask. There's not a single blemish on it. It's pristine, because he doesn't want anyone to see how ugly he is underneath of it.
That's a good way to look at it. I also look at it as he's just obsessed with physical perfection, which is why when he's having sex with the prostitutes, as he's having sex with them, he's flexing his muscles and staring at himself in the mirror the whole time, because he's just so obsessed with the perfect body that he's created.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I don't think there's been a more self-obsessed character in fiction, in movies I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely not.
The guy's so in love with himself, it's insane.
But actually, it's actually very similar to how Christian Bale tackled this role, because surprisingly, when he originally auditioned for this role, they rejected him. The producers didn't want him for it. But he was so committed to the fact that he was meant to play this role that he spent 9 months after his rejection for this part. He spent the next 9 months working out and preparing for this role, even though the producers attached Leo DiCaprio and Ewan McGregor and other people. He kept lobbying himself to the producers to give him another chance. And he even called Ewan McGregor when McGregor was offered the role by the producers, and he was going to accept it. Christian Bale called him on the phone and persuaded him to turn it down so that he could be in it.
And also, when he finally got cast as the role and he met the writer of the book.
Yeah. Bret Easton Ellis.
Yeah, he met him at a bar, and Bret Easton Ellis is waiting for him at the bar, just having a drink. And then all of a sudden, Christian Bale shows up in character, in wardrobe, as Patrick Bateman. And Bret Easton Ellis said he was so uncomfortable that he had to ask Christian Bale to stop the routine, because he thought he was going to get killed in real life, because he did it so well. And this is one of his most iconic performances of all time, for sure.
100%. He should have been Oscar nominated for this.
Yeah. And one of my favorite parts about this film is the use of voiceover.
Yeah.
And for me, it basically shows that Patrick is basically like directing and narrating his own life as it happens, rather than living in the reality that he exists in. You know, it's like he's watching himself carry out like a play of himself.
Yeah.
And
he's like giving us play-by-play.
Yeah, basically. And then when he finally gets to kill, that's when he comes out from being a director.
Yeah.
You know, he constantly refers to himself in the third person, and he's like, he talks about Patrick Bateman as if it's someone else. He's like, there's an idea of Patrick Bateman,
yeah.
and says things like that. So like, it's like Patrick Bateman is this vehicle which he didn't choose, but he's trapped inside, and really he's just this crazy sociopathic killer.
Yeah. There's this kind of surrealist quality to the filmmaking that Mary Harron carries out, where sometimes things just feel a little weird and kind of not realistic. Like, for example, Willem Dafoe's character, he plays a detective investigating the disappearance of Paul Allen, who Bateman murdered. And they have 3 different scenes together, 3 different small interviews, not interrogations, but like questioning. And so Mary Harron, the way she directed Willem Dafoe's, for the first scene, she had Willem Dafoe behave as if he was very suspicious of Patrick Bateman. And then the second scene they were together, she had Willem Dafoe behave as if he was completely oblivious to Bateman's guilt and was just more of like a buddy. And then the third scene, she had him act like mildly suspicious. So he changed his tone completely in every interaction to make it feel like kind of surrealist, and is like, because it has an ambiguous ending of it all in his head, so it gives us that nature of that quality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Patrick Bateman's kind of a unique serial killer that we've seen from other films, whereas like killing doesn't seem to be a complete necessity of him. And more of like a hobby. For example, before he kills the escort, the blonde one, he spends a night with her and with another girl. And yes, he sleeps with them and everything. And at the end of the night, he's like going for like a screwdriver, I think, or something.
Yeah.
And he's thinking he's probably gonna kill them, but then he lets them go, which means that he doesn't completely kill on impulse or urges, but he also does too. Like he also kills people who are lower than him, or he doesn't think should deserve to be alive, like the homeless man.
But then also, that begs the question, are the kills actually in his imagination? And so when we see a kill, is it really happening? Because when he lets the girls go, maybe that's the reality. And then the other time when he kills the prostitutes, that's his imagination.
Well, this whole movie is full of reality and delusions and what's real. Is he really killing these people? Is he killing some of these people? Is he not killing any of them at all?
Yeah. But one of my favorite parts of the character is his obsession with pop music, and how intense he is with his fandom for these random artists. Because in the book, there will be pages and pages devoted to describing like random musicians in their recent album.
Yeah, that's one of the most entertaining scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Where
that Paul Allen kill.
Yeah, he gets Paul Allen, played by Jared Leto, really well, completely drunk. And then he gets him into his apartment, Paul Allen's apartment. And then you see Bateman put on this like raincoat outfit to protect his suit.
There's newspaper everywhere.
Puts on Hip to Be Square, and is just going into like history facts and 101 about the band and about the music and about the genre.
And he's doing like the hip dance, and then he's just like being super goofy.
And he's hiding an axe behind his back.
But he's like so excited. You can
he's
see
giddy.
He's just like he's in anticipation for the kill.
And then he goes over to Paul Allen. He's like, "Hey, Paul." And then he finally swings the axe down, and that's when you see that inner killer of Patrick Bateman come out that he hides so well from everyone.
He lets that monster out. He's like, "See if you can get into the Dorsia now, you fuck."
I love the shit with Dorsia getting reservation. The reservation of Dorsia is fucking hilarious.
You didn't
man.
leave your name. They know me.
They know me. And so he kills him, and he basks in it, and he just smokes a cigar and sits there.
But what's really great about that shot, and it was actually an accident, so in that shot, after he kills Paul Allen, in the actual physicality of making the scene, they had like a blood effect that splattered on him after he did the act, and the blood splattered on one half of his face. So half of his face is completely clean, and the other half is completely covered in blood. And it was just an accident, and because the way she shot it was, she showed both sides of him with different angles. So one angle you can see the monstrous, and his hair's messy on that side. So in one angle you can see the monstrous true nature of Patrick Bateman, and on the other side you can see the clean-cut Patrick Bateman that he shows to the public.
Wow, I thought they did that on purpose.
And they watched the footage on playback, and they were like, wow, that was amazing, and they didn't even plan it.
It's an accidental metaphor for the character.
It's amazing. He actually based some of his performance on Tom Cruise.
Did you really?
He was trying to figure out where to go with the character, and then he was watching a late-night talk show with Tom Cruise in it, and he said that he saw this fake friendliness and emptiness in Tom Cruise's eyes.
Which you know is there.
Yeah, and he was like, that's exactly what I need to capture.
He's a very observant guy.
Yeah.
Most great actors are. And while Bateman hates people he considers inferior to him, he's also obviously extremely envious of people who are more successful than him or better than him, especially his coworkers. And this leads to the killing of Paul Allen, because that terrific scene,
the business card scene,
the business cards where the business cards in the movie is really a big part of that scene, but in the book he's obsessed with business cards. And
they're constantly going through him.
When he finds out, according to him, in his subjective mind, that Paul Allen's car is getting a better reaction and is better, he's like, oh my God, he even has a watermark.
He drops it. And then the guy goes, I think Peter, he goes, Patrick, you're sweating.
It's insane. He kills the guy over a business card. But again,
what's a really cool thing about that scene, which shows like surrealist nature of the movie, is every one of their business cards says vice president. Each and every one of them.
And all their cards are almost identical.
Yeah.
That's the ironic thing about it. You couldn't tell the difference looking at them side by side.
It's bone.
And then again, this leads to, are these all delusions? Are these just in his imagination? Would you kill somebody over a business card, or is it just a crazy fantasy because Patrick is probably a sociopath internally, but sociopaths aren't necessarily killers.
Yeah.
That's more of psychopath territory.
Yeah.
Sociopath would mean that he just has
Lacks
crazy
empathy.
fantasies about wanting to kill. So is this just a fantasy of wanting to kill Paul Allen, which they show in the movie, but did it even take place?
Yeah. But there's some hysterical moments in this movie. I just want to try to list a few off. Like, I love when Willem Dafoe goes to see him in his office for the first time. And he's got like a porno magazine and he's watching a porn DVD. And then Dafoe walks in and he's like, oh, he throws it into his drawer.
He's acting like nothing happened.
And then when Chloe Sevigny goes to his apartment and he just grabs the nail gun and he's just standing behind her holding it out.
Like, again, are these fantasies or not? They can be.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about this movie is it's left open for interpretation with an ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
So basically if you've seen it, it ends where he basically goes on a killing spree and then he makes it back to his apartment and he confesses killing a bunch of people to his lawyer. And then the next day, his lawyer thinks it's a practical joke.
Yeah.
And also his assistant, Chloe Sevigny, I think her name's Jean in the movie, finds this weird notebook full of all these horrible, horrific drawings that he does.
And there's the chainsaw murder is actually drawn in the notebook.
Yeah, and also the apartment he killed Paul Allen in is pristine. The bodies aren't there, and it's even being rented, and the realtor has never heard of Paul Allen.
Yeah.
And so...
And also for Paul Allen, people think he's Paul Allen half the time.
Yeah, and then his lawyer even says that he had lunch with Paul Allen 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And so it ends with this ambiguous tone and open ending where, are they fantasies? Are some of them fantasies? Did he kill people, but really Paul Allen was the fantasy? And it's really fun because you get to make up your own mind about if he killed all these people or not.
Yeah. And the last thing we see is a sign that says, this is not an exit.
Yeah. And then another thing that shows that it's probably a fantasy is when he's being chased by the police and then he points a handgun at a cop car and shoots like 4 times and blows it up. And he looks at the gun. He's like, what the fuck? I can't believe that just happened. That's not real.
But I love after that he goes to his work to the building and he goes inside and the security guard he's like, hey, what's up, Bateman?
He calls him Mr. Smith.
He calls him Mr. Smith. And then Bateman walks past him and then he goes, turns around and shoots him and goes back around and goes up.
It's such a fun scene, the panic that he has on his face. Yeah. This movie, it's really fun, and you got to be open-minded to it in terms of if you're not a fan of like gore and horror and killing.
And it's like he's misogynistic, you know what I mean?
It's just the character.
He's an awful person, but you have to be able to separate like your ideals from just this fictional movie
and this character.
And if you can, it's a really enjoyable experience. It's so funny.
Yeah, I love this movie. I've seen it like 15, 20 times.
And
at least. Like I said, every time it gets better and funnier.
Yeah.
And you pick up new things about it.
But this is easily one of my favorite Christian Bale roles, hands down.
And obviously, it made our list of our favorite serial killer movies.
Fuck yeah. It's a good list.
Move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
All right, let's move on to Silence of the Lambs, which came out in 1991, directed by Jonathan Demme, starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. Jodie Foster plays a rookie FBI agent tracking down a serial killer with the help of an imprisoned psychopath, Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
And this is actually based off of the real-life relationship between criminology professor Robert Keppel and his work with Ted Bundy to help investigate the Green River killings in the late 1960s.
Interesting. And so Jodie Foster is fantastic in this movie. It's her movie from the beginning to the end. You know, the opening of the movie is with her at FBI. And Agent Clarice Starling is an iconic character in serial killer cinema. And she's a great
She's
hero.
she's one of the most memorable FBI agents in general. Like her, Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah,
like,
she's up there.
Great.
And 30 years later, this film is still a chilling masterpiece. It swept the top 5 categories at the Oscars when it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Actor, and Best Screenplay. And
it's rare.
It was that the other movies that have done that is like One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest, and I think there's one other movie that's done that. Maybe
There's
The
a couple,
Godfather or something
only a
like
couple.
that. So it's a very rare accomplishment for a film, which shows the testament of how great of a film it is. It's one of the best movies ever made.
Absolutely. And in terms of the serial killer genre, what's unique about this film is it has 2 incredibly memorable serial killers in it. And so it has Hannibal Lecter and it has Buffalo Bill. And the thing is, Buffalo Bill kind of gets cast in the shadow by Hannibal Lecter because Lecter is so profound of a character. And when you think of Silence of the Lambs, you think of Hannibal Lecter. But Buffalo Bill in his own right is a fascinating character and a great villain in this movie.
Yeah, and Hannibal Lecter by Anthony Hopkins, one of his best performances, probably his best performance. And there's so many interesting things about it where people have these common ideas and phrases about Hannibal Lecter in this movie, and one of them is "Hello, Clarice." And there's another theory where Hannibal Lecter doesn't blink in the movie, and both of these things are completely untrue. He never says "Hello, Clarice" in the film, and he blinks many times in the film, and this is clearly a testament to 2 things. Anthony Hopkins' incredible and haunting performance as Hannibal Lecter. It probably looks like he doesn't blink. There are long stares for sure.
Yeah.
But he also never says "Hello, Clarice." And this is also what's called the Mandela effect, where you imagine something to be true when it clearly isn't.
And a group of people believe the same
thing. And this
thing.
is a state of pop culture.
Yeah.
"Hello, Clarice" is not a line in this movie.
Yeah.
And then he does blink. Watch the opening scene with him. He has long stares, but he blinks many times in this film.
100%. And what's really cool about this role is, believe it or not, Anthony Hopkins had struggled for 3 decades to find consistent film work. He had been working and auditioning and trying for roles for 30 years, and he wasn't getting any good traction. He had always been a great stage actor, and he always did that. But when he was cast as Hannibal Lecter, he decided that if it didn't work out with this movie, he was going to retire from film acting and just work on stage acting in Britain. So he was like he felt like he was at the end of his career. No one had given him a chance, and no one had given him like the recognition he thought he deserved. So it was like a last-ditch effort for him to make it as a film actor.
Wow, that's super fascinating.
Which is amazing because it's one of the most loved performances ever.
Yeah. And like the great thing about this movie is at the Oscars, Billy Crystal like dressed up as Hannibal Lecter at the opening.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm having some people at the Academy over for dinner. Would you like to join me? It's hysterical, and it's the performance of the year, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's again one of the most iconic performances in serial killer genre, horror genre, mystery genre.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Hannibal Lecter, and every rendition you can think of, his is the best.
And the thing with Lecter is he's so intelligent that it seems as though like there's nothing he doesn't know. It seems like he knows everything about everything. He always has an answer, and he's always one step ahead of everyone else, which ends up being true because all along his entire plan was giving misleading information to the feds on this wild goose chase to find Buffalo Bill in exchange to make a deal for him to get the prison transfer, which aided in him getting the opportunity to escape. So he was the feds thought they were using him, but in reality, he was using them the entire time, which shows how powerful of a manipulator he is.
Yeah. And Jonathan Demme did a fantastic job directing this movie, deservedly got the Oscar for Best Director. And he does a lot of interesting things filmmaking-wise where he's constantly putting main characters in some of the characters into boxes or cages, starting with Clarice in the elevator in the beginning of the film, Hannibal Lecter inside of his cell, and even Buffalo Bill's victims in the bottomless pit in his basement. So that's a really interesting thing he does to his characters.
So Demme, in a lot of movies, he has his characters look directly into camera when it's 2 people having a conversation, rather than looking just off camera at the other person and it would cut to the other person. He has his actors look right into the lens so that they're speaking to the audience directly. And it's an effect that he's always used to great effect, but I think Hannibal Lecter staring into the camera, looking at the audience with his piercing eyes in that like disturbing manner, it was just so iconic and it just gets under your skin every time you watch it.
Every shot of Hannibal Lecter is iconic and disturbing. Like, just the first time you see him when he's in his cell and he's just standing there upright in, like, a motionless position like a statue, but his eyes and his mouth is just, like, slightly open. And he's, like, so interested in Starling and intrigued by her. And I want to talk about the relationship between Starling and Lecter for a little bit, and why does Lecter like Clarice so much, and why doesn't he end up killing her at the end of the movie, which clearly he could have if he escaped?
I think he's fascinated by Clarice, which is why he pretty much makes this currency exchange where to give information to her, he wants information about her and her traumatic past.
And he wants to analyze her.
Yeah, so I think when he finds someone who's intelligent and strong and interesting, he is obsessed with trying to understand them psychologically and break them down.
And also with Starling, she's the first person he's ever touched in years. When he graces her hand with his finger, it's the first time he's touched another person, especially a woman. In like as long as he's been locked up. And so that's obviously a brief moment, but I think that's also a reason why he's obsessed with her and so interested in her.
And also, most people refer to Hannibal as his nickname, Hannibal the Cannibal. But the thing with Clarice is she never mentions his nickname. And when she speaks to him, she always refers to him as either Dr. Lecter or Mr. Lecter. So she always shows him this sign of respect, as if she knows he's this horrible, monstrous person, but she still understands his intelligence and has a kind of respect for him.
Yeah, Clarice is a very brave character, but I think she's very intelligent, and she knows that she doesn't really pose in any danger from Hannibal Lecter, because Hannibal Lecter, he preys on predators. Those are the kinds of people he kills. He doesn't just kill random innocent people. He kills predators and bad people. And people will take advantage of other people. That's like his MO. He knows everything except for the lambs. What do the lambs mean? And so they're constantly going back and forth between the story that Clarice tells him about the lambs on the farm that she used to grow up on. And basically, her story shows that Clarice Starling is just a very good, innocent person, because she ends up saving one of the lambs from slaughter. And that's why she runs away from home, to save one of the lambs. And she'll sacrifice her home to save the lamb. And she reveals how innocent of a person she is.
It's her saving the lambs in her profession. Like, she's saving the women that these serial killers are killing. Like, they're being slaughtered like lambs.
Exactly. So that's why will do anything to save the woman in the pit, even though she's down there when they find Buffalo Bill, and she's in that pit, and she's fucking terrified. And every time I watch this movie, I am scared out of my mind watching Clarice in Buffalo Bill's basement, even when the lights are on. Even when the lights are on in my living room, and the lights are on in my movie, or in the movie. But just the situation she's in, where she's definitely in a huge basement she doesn't recognize.
There's so many doors.
Yeah. There's like hidden compartments and stuff like that. There's a freaking pit in the bottom of the basement with a woman inside of it.
And Demi obviously builds the tension by not letting us know where Buffalo Bill is. So we have no idea where he is either.
And the awesome thing about it is, you think they find Buffalo Bill, and they're about to raid the house, and they have like the flower van and everything, and they're about to go knock on the door, and they ring the doorbell, and it shows the buzzer in Buffalo Bill's basement, and you're like, oh, they got him here. Well, simultaneously, Clarice is going to check out another end of the investigation,
like another lead,
which she doesn't think is going to lead to anything, but it's just an end she has to finish up investigating.
It's literally just for like paperwork.
But little does she know that she's actually about to talk to Buffalo Bill.
So what happens is, when Clarice knocks on the door, we think that the cops are at the door of Buffalo Bill's house, and then when she knocks on the door, Buffalo Bill opens it. I think it's one of the most famous cuts in film history. It's such a misdirection and such a surprise.
Yeah, you can tell a ton of movies are trying to copy that effect.
And then when Clarice goes into the house, it literally takes her 30 seconds to understand something's wrong, something's off here. And then when she starts seeing the moths, you're like, holy fuck, get out of there. And then Buffalo Bill obviously understands that she's onto him immediately and fires the gun at her.
Buffalo Bill is such like an interesting serial killer, because it seems realistic compared to what we've seen in cinema before. This like crazy psychotic guy who clearly they talk about had mother issues. And the way he captures the woman to get into the van is just so smart and devious and effective and terrifying. So many iconic images with Buffalo Bill, like when he cross-dresses. And so Buffalo Bill thinks that he's a transsexual when he isn't. And Hannibal Lecter explains this to Clarice during one of their conversations, because Buffalo Bill constantly transforms himself into different emotional beings.
Yeah, throughout his life, he's always changed his persona.
And so he's trying to become what he thinks his mother wanted, which is a woman.
Yeah.
So that's why he dresses up as a woman, and he's trying to make this woman suit to become what his mother wanted, because his mother wanted a girl instead of a boy. And so he's not actually a transsexual. Not that there's anything wrong with being a transsexual, but his character is confused about being a transsexual.
Yeah. It's a fascinating character. And like I said, if it was just him in the movie, it'd still be a great movie. But since Hannibal is so memorable, he casts a big shadow over Buffalo Bill. And one of my favorite things about Hannibal, and it's an iconic image for the movie, is the mask. That mask they put on him, because it's terrifying. It's like a muzzle for a dog. And if you see a mask like that on a person, you're like, what kind of person is this where they require a mask like this? It's terrifying to think of. And they actually built it from an old goalie mask from the 1940s.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It looks like what they tried to do in Con Air too. Like Con Air kind of copied it with
Steve Buscemi's
character. Like they basically created a Hannibal Lecter. It's pretty cheesy.
It's a big ripoff.
We'll have to do Con Air in our best worst movies of all time.
We just do a whole Nick Cage podcast.
Yeah. But the mask is terrifying, especially when he's wearing it and he's talking to like the governor or the senator.
Yeah.
It's just like, holy crap, this guy's scary as fuck. Even though he's tied down with the jacket and the mask,
you still feel like he's dangerous.
Yeah, you still feel like he could kill everybody in the room.
Yeah.
And the genius of Hannibal Lecter's escape. We talked about this in our villain episode, but we'll talk about it again. And it's just so smart the way he tricks all the guards. He's like you've said earlier. He's smarter than everybody in the world.
Yeah.
He's a genius intellect, which makes him so terrifying. He's not a physically demanding person. He's not young and strong and youthful, but his mind is so sharp and he's so intelligent that he just outsmarts everybody. And he tricks the guards to get into the cell with him, and he steals the pen from the doctor, the arrogant doctor, to escape the handcuffs. And then the way he escapes by cutting off the face of one of the guards, stealing his outfit, and putting the face on himself is just genius.
Unbelievable.
He puts the dead body on top of the elevator to slow the cops down.
And it's a long scene. It's like 10 minutes of we think that he's on top of the elevator and the SWAT's getting ready and they shoot at him, and it's an amazing sequence. And then it cuts to the ambulance, and then he just sits up.
Oh my
God!
God!
And he looks at the EMT, and you're like, oh fuck!
Terrifying, man. It's so smart and fun though.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's such a well-written story, and the screenplay is phenomenal. It's a great adaptation.
Yeah. I love this movie.
And then the climax scene again, where we're going back to Starling in the basement of Buffalo Bill. And Buffalo Bill, earlier in the movie, they teased about his night vision goggles, which he has used.
Yeah.
And then so he puts on the night vision goggles, and he's basically stalking Clarice throughout his basement, and it's so terrifying.
Yeah.
And you're just tense the entire time.
Jodie Foster's just shaking. She doesn't know where to go.
She's clumsy because she can't see. She's tripping over things, and you can see there are these shots where Buffalo Bill is like reaching out to grab her.
Yeah.
And like I always wonder, like, why doesn't he just grab her by the face, and why doesn't he just grab her and like choke her or something like that? But again, she has a gun in her hand, so obviously I think there's two reasons why he doesn't grab her. Is he doesn't want to get shot because the gun's obviously in her hand.
Yeah.
And also he's toying with her dread.
I think he's just enjoying watching her in peril.
Like he like almost like combs the side of her face.
Yeah.
It's just so disturbing.
Like he's attracted to her horror.
Yeah. And then eventually he cocks his gun and she hears it, and Clarice, bam, ba, ba, ba. See you later.
Great reaction
and
time.
The lights go out.
She shoots open the window.
Holy crap. It's a great ending.
It's a great ending. It's a great climax.
The first time I saw this movie, I was terrified. That's one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Probably up there.
Imagine seeing it in theaters.
Holy crap, dude. What a movie.
But it deservedly won Best Picture because it's an unbelievable film, and it's one of my favorites, and I think it's easily one of the greatest crime films ever made.
All right, that's 3 movies down, 1 more to go. We're going to be doing The Talented Mr. Ripley, which came out in 1999, directed by Anthony Minghella, starring Matt Damon, Jude Law, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Gwyneth Paltrow, amazing cast.
Kate
Blanchett's in it too. Personally, one of my all-time favorite movies. This is in like my top 15. I adore everything about this film. The characters, the acting, the directing, the locations, the set, Italy. It's all wonderful, and it's based on the book of the same title by the fantastic Patricia Highsmith, who's a great writer. If you like fiction, go read her books. She's made some great ones.
Yeah, Ripley's a great character, and this is easily one of my favorite Matt Damon performances, and it's probably his best movie that he's ever been in.
I could say that, yeah.
You can make the argument that
it's like that or Good Will Hunting
or Saving Private Ryan, but you could make the case for this movie. This movie was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. And it was the second to last movie that Anthony Minghella made before he passed away at the age of like 51 or something. He was very young. Mm-hmm. But this is his best film he made. And this is the rare occasion where you get to see Matt Damon play a villain.
Yeah.
You get to see him play a sociopathic killer. And he's such a great performer where it's slowly you slowly see the subtle differences that Tom Ripley has compared to a normal person. And they start to get bigger and bigger until they finally crescendo and the real Tom Ripley is finally revealed.
Yeah, I know Minghella had wanted to make a film about Tom Ripley for a long time, but he never wanted to do it until he found the right actor to play Tom Ripley, and Matt Damon was his choice, and obviously knocked it out of the park. And Tom Ripley is honestly, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating characters in fiction to come out of the 20th century.
Yeah.
In my opinion, He's quite literally a con man. He's also highly intelligent, completely narcissistic. He's adaptable, an opportunist, a closet homosexual, and a serial killer. And as a member of the audience, you can't help but feel empathy for him because he comes from nothing, and you relate to him in his struggle and where he comes from.
And also, I think the term "the talented Mr. Ripley" comes from his greatest talent, which is to lie. And lying has a lot of different facets, where it is impersonating someone or tricking someone or manipulating someone. So Tom has this incredible skill with being able to get people to believe whatever he wants.
Yeah, Tom acts as a mirror and replicates the behaviors of the people in his company. And he has a gift for forgery, impersonations, imitation, and lying, like you said.
Yeah.
And even blatantly in the film tells Dickie, played by Jude Law, about these talents. He tells him, Dickie asks him what his skills are, and he's like, forgery, I can forge signatures, I can impersonate basically anybody.
Yeah.
And Dickie's too arrogant and ignorant to realize that he's being honest.
He thinks this is a joke.
This is the first time that Tom Ripley's being honest with him in the entire film.
Yeah.
Because he's constantly lying, and he's so good at lying and telling fibs.
And he gets into Dickie's inner circle because of his ability to manipulate and control the other people around him. So it first begins with Ripley, with Tom finding them on the beach and pretending to be an old friend of his from Princeton. And next it goes to him dropping the vinyl records out of his briefcase, which Dickie obviously loves. And having that connection to jazz is what draws Dickie to become friends with Tom. Mm-hmm. So he's able to use these lies and this manipulation to control Dickie and get him into his life.
Even starts sooner than that.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie opens up, the first act, Ripley seems like this very innocent, likable guy. I mean, he tells fibs here and there.
One of the first things he says is a white lie, where that older couple asks him about Princeton, and he lies saying he goes to Princeton. He went to Princeton.
Yeah, he can't help but lie.
Yeah.
And that's because every single lie he tells leads him more and more into the life that he's never had and the life that he desires.
Yeah.
It starts with lying about Princeton with Dickie Greenleaf's father.
Yep.
And then that leads to the trip that he goes on to bring Dickie Greenleaf back from Italy.
So Greenleaf is a shipping magnate, and his son Dickie has been living it up in Italy for years,
spending in his inheritance.
So he hires Tom to go to Italy to get Dickie to come back to America.
Yeah, and then he meets Cate Blanchett's character while traveling, where he lies again, claiming that he's Dickie Greenleaf
for really no reason at all.
But it does lead to a relationship with her and more interactions later on.
Yeah.
And then again, like you said, lying to Dickie about Princeton, lying to Dickie about the jazz, which leads to him eventually being invited to stay indefinitely at Dickie's house because they have this past connection that Dickie thinks is true. And so he constantly lies because it gets him what he wants.
And then, even though Tom was hired to carry out this job, he finds himself so enamored and obsessed with Dickie, where he becomes a pseudo version of Dickie, where he begins taking on his character traits and his interests, and he eventually wants to be partners with Dickie, and he wants to live with Dickie.
Yeah, he falls in love with Dickie Greenleaf.
Yeah, exactly.
Which leads to eventually, again, spoiler alerts, him going on this basically killing rampage, starting with killing Dickie.
Yeah, so what happens is Dickie rejects Tom eventually, and this rejection crushes Tom and destroys him, and it leads to him killing Dickie because he completely loses his grip on reality, and he loses control in himself and lashes out at Dickie and beats him to death on a boat.
Yeah, there's multiple reasons I think why Tom kills Dickie. I think, yes, anger and rage from rejection, obviously, but also envy. You know, Tom envies everything about Dickie, and that's why he gets caught wearing his clothes. He impersonates Dickie
Wears
in
his
his
watch
free
and
time.
jewelry.
So he's obsessed with Dickie and envies his entire life.
So what Tom does is he wants to make Dickie's life his life. Exactly that.
Mm-hmm. And killing Dickie could be, to Tom, the next best thing to not being with Dickie is killing him.
Because if he can't have Dickie, why not be Dickie?
But he doesn't eventually think that his plan isn't to become Dickie yet.
Yeah.
So he kills him on the sailboat, and then
what's funny about Tom Ripley as a character in all of his stories is things just happen. His actions just cause more things to happen, and he kind of just wings it as he goes along.
Yeah, and
it's
usually
really
things work out for him.
Yeah.
That's the thing about his character is he's a horrible guy, but that's what's so interesting about him. It always works out for Tom Ripley.
Because he's so great at lying.
Yeah, and it's just that's why he loves to lie. Bad things happen, but he always comes out on top.
Yeah.
And so he kills Dickie on the sailboat, and then he goes back to the hotel. And the concierge, since they're in Italy, they see this white American guy, so they assume that that's Dickie Greenleaf.
Yeah.
And so that's when he gets this moment. There's this great shot where he's panicking because he just killed Dickie and dumped his sailboat with his body in the bottom of the ocean. Mm-hmm. And then the concierge calls him Senor Greenleaf, and then Tom Ripley looks at him like, wait a second. So then that's when he starts to steal Dickie's identity, and he's so good at impersonating, and he kind of looks like him, and he's a handsome guy too when he's not wearing glasses.
And this is when the tone of the movie shifts from the first act. I think it's like a 2-act structure movie.
Mm-hmm. And they're kind of two different movies. Yeah, you're right.
And then the second act is Tom has carried out all these acts, and now he's trying to deal with the repercussions of his actions, and he's struggling to stay out of the eyes of the law.
And the thing I love about Tom Ripley is we just watched him kill this guy, but also for me when I watch it, it's like this might not be his first time he's killed somebody.
Yeah, you don't know. You see, it seems like it's possible.
It seems like it could be his first, but it also you don't know much about him. You know he's a con man.
And because what happens is, at first he's very distraught after he kills Dickie, but a week later he's wearing Dickie's clothes and he bought a new apartment with Dickie's money and he's just living it up as Dickie Greenleaf,
happiest he's ever been.
So the brilliance of his plan is he kills Dickie, but he uses his innate ability to impersonate to make it seem as though Dickie is just living somewhere else. So he ends up playing both Tom Ripley and Dickie Greenleaf, depending on who he's in a situation with.
Yeah, so again, Tom Ripley's very smart.
Yeah.
And he figures out a way to get out of the situation.
But the biggest crux in his plan is when Philip Seymour Hoffman shows up.
Freddie
Miles, this is an early Hoffman movie. And since he's obviously immensely talented, he steals every scene he's in.
He's so good in this movie.
He's so funny, and he's just like this arrogant, suave, like egocentric American who's just like thinks he's the hot shit in Europe. You know what I mean? Wears a corduroy jacket in Italy.
Oh, Tom, we were just talking about you.
Tommy.
And Freddie is everything that Tom hates in people. He's loud, obnoxious, unattractive, self-centered, and incredibly arrogant to think that he's the talk of the town in Italy.
And he can't believe that Dickie actually enjoys being with Freddie.
And again, jealous of Freddie because Dickie chooses Freddie over him.
And also, Freddie kind of sees through Tom immediately. Mm-hmm. He immediately doesn't like Tom.
Yeah, there's that great scene where him and Freddie and Dickie are listening to jazz in that little booth, and they're about to go meet friends, but Tom really wants to tour Rome with Dickie, like Dickie promised him.
Yeah.
But then Dickie tells him, just go on, enjoy yourself. Then he goes back to the booth, and there's this great take of Philip Seymour Hoffman as Freddy just dancing, but he's just staring directly through Tom Ripley.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine what he's thinking in his head.
Yeah, like he has pity for Tom.
Yeah, like Hoffman just portrays so much with his eyes in that shot. Yeah. It's just phenomenal.
And which brings us to the point where Dickie's been missing for so long. And then Freddy goes to what he thinks is Dickie's apartment. He finally tracked down Dickie and finds Tom there wearing clothes that Dickie likes to wear. And this is where immediately Freddy can see right through Tom's facade. He doesn't obviously know he's a serial killer, sociopath,
Not
but
yet.
He knows that something's up. And this is the first time where Tom can't lie his way out of a situation, which leads to Tom eventually killing Freddie Miles.
Yeah, so Tom is on this killing spree to cover up loose end after loose end after loose end, and it's so fascinating to see because you're right. The first half of the movie, he doesn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
In the second part of this movie, this guy is just murdering everybody in the social circle. He's about to be the only person in this group of friends. So why does Tom Ripley imitate people and steal identities?
Because he thinks that he himself is worthless and doesn't have an identity. So he's never felt whole as a person. And so when he impersonates another human being, he feels like he has improved himself.
Exactly. He's just full of self-hatred.
Yeah.
Tom hates himself, never wants to be himself, and would much rather be living someone else's life.
Yeah. Things begin to settle down pretty quickly, and he meets Peter. And Peter becomes this man who Tom feels like he can establish a intimate relationship with. They don't say it, but Peter is definitely gay.
Yeah, Peter's a homosexual, and Tom Ripley is a closet homosexual, basically.
And so, but what happens is Tom finally finds this man who has similar interests to him, and Tom feels as though, he can finally open up to someone and be Tom Ripley, the real Tom Ripley, with another person. But what happens is, because of Tom's actions in the beginning of the story, and because of him lying to Cate Blanchett's character, Meredith. So him lying to Meredith in the beginning of the film and establishing that relationship with her, what happens is on a boat trip with Peter, which is supposed to be a great getaway and a romantic weekend with Peter.
This is the end of the movie, too.
The end of the film. Tom runs into Meredith. Now, Meredith thinks that he's Dickie Greenleaf, and Peter thinks that he's Tom Ripley. And they're on the same boat. But Meredith hasn't seen Peter yet. She thinks she saw him. She mentions to Tom, is Peter here? And that's when Tom is like, it's over. And so this leads him, he has to kill Peter, because otherwise, if Meredith and Peter run into each other, he's up, because they think he's different people. So the jig would be up. So he has to go back to the cabin and murder the one person that he felt that he could have had a true relationship with, and the one person he could have been himself with.
I'm going to disagree with you here. I don't think Tom sees Peter as someone that he could settle down with and have a relationship with. I think because we've seen we've seen what Tom does and what he does to imitate people and what he does to get into people's lives and steal their identities and everything. I think he's clearly using Peter as a mark. And you can kind of tell this when he's playing the piano at Peter's apartment, and he seems like Peter's off camera in another room, and Tom, you can tell he's just kind of lying through his teeth. He's trying to make himself feel vulnerable. I think he's being fake vulnerable to put on an act. I think he's putting on an act for Peter to make Peter fall for him so that he can eventually, he'll use Peter to get away from his situation, but eventually he's going to get rid of Peter and move on. He's going to kill Peter eventually. Personally, I think that yes, he'll use him for intimate reasons, but I don't think he's using him to have a relationship, and I think he's going to be expendable to him at some point.
So I disagree with you. I understand your point, but I think because before he kills Peter, right before he kills him, he says, I guess I'm just going to be stuck in the dark, which means he'll always have to be this fake version of himself.
Yeah, but
and then he also weeps as he kills Peter.
But he's also saying that because he's trying to have Peter's defenses as low as possible so that he can strangle him. Yes, I think he has feelings for Peter, but I don't think he has long-term feelings for him. I think he's a stepping stone for him to keep getting what he wants.
I disagree, but
Hey, we can disagree.
It's okay, yeah.
It's good to interpret
This is the first
different
time we
things.
disagree
Yeah,
about something.
we're usually on point. I don't know.
But then, so after killing Peter, it leads to one of my favorite shots of the movie where Tom's sitting in the cabin, and then there's a closet door with a mirror on it, and it's opened, and because of the swaying of the boat, the door is opening and closing, and it's showing this reflection of Tom, and it's moving back and forth, and Tom's just sitting there. He's distraught after what he just did, and that's actually it's a bookend of the film. That's the first shot you see in the movie is Tom's reflection in the cabin after murdering Peter. You don't know what he did, but it's that shot
with the voiceover.
Yeah,
if I go back and take everything back, and scribble out my entire life or something like that.
Exactly. And then there's also another shot that I think is amazing, which is after he kills Freddy and gets away with it, Tom decides to quit the charade of being Dickie, and he's just gonna be Tom from now on. And so what happens is he's in his apartment and he has a black grand piano, and he closes the piano, and then you see two reflections of his head. One's upside down and one's right side up, and the heads are joined. And then what Tom does, since he's breaking free of Dickie Greenleaf, he backs away, and both the reflections separate from each other.
Yeah, I love
and
that
become
shot.
two people.
It's one of my favorite shots too.
It's unbelievable metaphor for what he's doing.
Yeah, because just before that, it's just this great part of the film where he's putting on this intricate act of being both Dickie Greenleaf and Tom Ripley.
Yeah.
And not only is he being interrogated by police as Dickie Greenleaf, he has to deal with Gwyneth Paltrow as Tom Ripley, and also Peter as Tom Ripley, and he's also dating Kate Blanchett as Dickie Greenleaf.
Yeah.
And he goes to the opera with Dickie Greenleaf, where
Dickie Greenleaf.
So he goes to the opera with Kate Blanchett with Meredith as Dickie Greenleaf, but accidentally bumps into Marge and Peter at the opera too. So he's doing this balancing act of both characters, where he's impersonating Dickie and being Tom Ripley, but also at the same time stealing Dickie's life. And then it's just this great counter of being interrogated by the Italian detectives. And then, like you said, he has to give up the jig because the heat's becoming too much. But he did such a good job tying up loose ends and such a good job creating alibis for Tom Ripley, for himself, and for Dickie Greenleaf, that he's able to just blend back into Tom Ripley's existence, which depresses him.
Yeah. And the plan only ever works because rather than just killing Dickie and just putting his body in the ocean and then just leaving, being able to make people believe that Dickie's still alive is what helps him get out of it, because what ends up happening is all the murders that have occurred, Dickie Greenleaf becomes the main suspect. So when Tom just becomes Tom, he's in the clear now. Even
Peter thinks that Dickie Greenleaf killed Tom Ripley and is murdering everybody up in Italy.
So it was the perfect crime because he made a dead person the prime suspect in a series of murders in Italy. So there's no way Tom would ever be suspected again.
Yeah, and then he gets away with it. The movie
not
ends...
only does he get away with it, but Dickie Greenleaf's father gives him some of Dickie's trust fund money.
Yeah, he gets part of his inheritance. Yeah. It's insane because...
things just work out.
Again, things work out for Tom Ripley. In the past, which we learned from Dickie Greenleaf's father's investigator, is that Dickie Greenleaf has history of violence against people, and a drunken history of violence, and put people in hospitals. And that's why he was in Italy to begin with, to exile from America from investigations of assaulting people. And so, he gets away scot-free, except for Marge still thinks it was him and knows it was him and ends kicking and screaming, being taken away. But this movie, somehow, we were just blessed to get this movie with so many amazing actors before their primes, before their fame, all still very young and raw talents, and everyone in this movie is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's just a treat to watch.
Jude Law got an Oscar nomination for this.
He's so good in this movie. It's one of my favorite Jude Law roles ever.
He's unbelievably charismatic and cool and intoxicating, and he plays, like Marge says it herself, like when Dickie Greenleaf is giving you his attention, you feel like you're the only person in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If you've never seen this movie, definitely go see it, go watch it. If you've seen it but haven't really given it a good watch, shut your phone off and watch this movie.
It's on Netflix, just put it on.
It's beautifully shot. The whole thing pretty much takes place in Italy. Mongebello doesn't exist. It's made up for the film and the story. But it's shot. It's wonderful.
I think it's one of the most stylish movies ever.
It's amazing.
The clothing, everyone's dressed so cool. The locations, set design, the music, It's a great artistic endeavor they carried out.
It's a wonderful watch, and again, top 15 in my list all time of my favorite movies. Not best of all time, but my favorite movies. Those are our top 4, our favorite serial killer films of all time.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's so many other serial killer movies that we'll go over real quickly. Like Zodiac. We love Zodiac. It's such a good movie. I've seen that movie like 10 times, even though it's 3 hours long almost.
Great.
But like, we chose to not put it in this episode because first, we already have a David Fincher movie in here, so we didn't want to do a director with 2 movies in the same subject.
Yeah.
And also, Leo pointed out to me that it's not really about the serial killer. It's more about the investigation, which, yes, 7 is about that too, but also we get a look at the serial killer too.
He's involved in the story.
And so it's a great movie. Zodiac's an amazing watch, but we chose to leave it out despite how much we love it.
Yeah. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is obviously a pinnacle of filmmaking, and one of the greatest serial killer films ever made. It has iconic imagery like the shower scene, like that spiral shot pulling back from her eyes. Norman Bates is an iconic character. It has that amazing twist ending where it's revealed that he was actually the mother all along. And it's an iconic movie, and it changed cinema.
Another great serial killer movie that we love is called Funny Games, and this is an Austrian movie, I think. You're right, which was remade into an American version starring Michael Pitt. Both versions are great. They're very similar, obviously.
They're made by Michael Hansen.
Yeah, the same director made the American version too. And it's about a family on just a vacation at their vacation home on a lake, and suddenly they get overrun by these 2 brothers who they say they're brothers, who turn out to be serial killers, and they basically spend the entire movie tormenting them and eventually killing them. Yeah. And it's an awesome movie. It's so tense,
very
and
disturbing,
psychological, like messes with your head, and it's really freaking good. It's so clever too.
Yeah. It's got Tim Roth and Naomi Watts in it.
The American version, I think the Austrian version's better, but
it's better,
The American version,
but honestly,
still very
it's
good.
actually pretty much shot for shot the identical films.
Yeah, even the sets are almost shot for shot.
And then a recent serial killer movie that I really liked. I saw the trailer and I thought it looked stupid, and then I watched it. Was Happy Death Day, which came out 3 years ago. Which is essentially it's Groundhog Day, but with a serial killer. So this girl keeps reliving the same day over and over again, where she's murdered by a serial killer, and so she's trying to figure out who the killer is. Because if she stops the killer, she'll stop the resetting of the day.
I actually haven't seen that. That sounds cool.
It's great. It's a cool story. And it's hysterical. Great lead actress. She does an amazing job, and it was a lot of fun. I recommend it. If anyone wants to watch something new, check that movie out. Happy Death Day.
Then we got Halloween, obviously. Mike Myers. This is a classic slasher movie, which is why we didn't put it in the serial killer movie category. It's both. It's slasher, it's a serial killer, it's horror, but we chose not to put it because Mike Myers is just like this basically a killing zombie.
Yeah.
You don't learn much about him.
There's no characterization to him, really.
Yeah, so
he doesn't have any dialogue.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's awesome, but we left it out of the category. That's more of a horror movie to us, despite it being about a serial killer.
Yeah.
And so, that's like the end of our list, I think, of other serial killers that we considered for this episode and that we really like a lot. Besides from that, if you haven't seen any of the movies we talked about, definitely check them out. Sorry if we spoiled any of the facts. It's what we do. We should have called this podcast Spoiler Alerts.
Spoiler Alerts.
I like Raiders of the Boss. I like Raiders better anyways.
Yeah. But these are great films. And I think serial killer movies are, if they're made well, they're such interesting watches, and it's like there's people are fascinated by this violence and by this evil that can be found within humankind.
Yeah, what humans are capable of.
Yeah,
and it's just enticing to learn about.
Yeah,
and I'm obsessed with serial killer podcasts. So
I don't like listening.
I got
to them.
back into them recently, and it's just like I'm so it's tough.
It's like you'll come up to me like, yo, you gotta listen to this podcast about like 16 children that were decapitated. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about that, man. Come on.
It's so good though.
I'd rather just
like a drug.
No, I'd rather like listen to Joe Rogan.
Anyways, that's the end of this episode 17 of Raiders of the Lost podcast.
Thanks
Stay
for tuning in
for Thursday. I mean, this is Thursday. Stay tuned for our episode on Monday, which will be coming out soon.
Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh, yeah. Get ready. We're going to go to the Shire and Middle Earth and everywhere. We're gonna hang out with some hobbits and stuff. We don't know what's gonna happen. It might get a little crazy up in here.
It's gonna be a good episode.
So stay tuned for that. I totally forgot we were doing Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Now I'm fucking stoked.
I already got the photos ready for the YouTube.
I can't wait. Lord of the Rings is the shit.
It might be a 6-hour episode
For real.
And also, we're gonna do. We're gonna actually go see Tenet in San Diego this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, so we're going to do a road trip to San Diego because San Diego is like the only county in California that's going to open up theaters on September 3rd. So we're going to go on September 4th or 5th to go see Tenet, and we don't care if it's a 2.5, 3-hour drive. We're going to fucking see Tenet this fucking weekend. It's going to happen.
And we're gonna film the whole experience, and we're gonna make a little video for you guys.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. Probably come out next Monday next Tuesday or
week,
something
yeah.
like that. And we'll do a review on Tenet too.
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
And if you haven't seen Tenet, don't fucking spoil it. Don't say anything.
Don't say anything. I don't want any DMs.
Don't spoil it. Again, if you like our podcast, share it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Share us with your movie friends. We know you have some of them. Even if you only have one friend, share it with them. Leave us a 5-star review, preferably with a written review. Those help a lot.
Hit that bell on YouTube. Get those notifications going.
So you know when we're dropping new episodes and new
Subscribe.
videos.
Subscribe.
We love you guys so much. We also have a fan sent us something cool, so we'll put that on the podcast pretty soon.
Yeah.
And other than that, everybody have a great weekend. Hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thanks for tuning in. Take care.
Boom.